Thank you, Claire. We are now opening the floor for discussion, but before we do that, we would like to introduce the ICOMOS members who are present to introduce themselves and to give a very brief description of what they do. I'll start with myself. I'm Kat Sana. My specialization is restoration of wall paintings, and currently working on the restoration of the Alfonso Osorio mural in Victoria's Church of the Angry Christ in Bacolod. Tracy Santiago, who's on the board, secretary.
Hello, I'm Tracy Santiago. I'm into cultural tourism, and I'm one of the consultants of the Sangguniang Bayan of Sagada Mountain Province. That is my current project right now. I also act as a resource person for cultural mapping for NCCA and for the Cultural Center of the Philippines. Thank you.
So, I'm Richard Thomas. I introduced myself, so just a new member of the ICOMOS Philippines. It's crazy, huh? I've never been. I know people in France and many places. I've never been. So I'm here in the Philippines, and I'm in ICOMOS Philippines. So thank you very much, and I pass you. So see you.
Ivan.
Good afternoon. I'm Ivan Linares. I'm the president of the Heritage Conservation Society. I'd like to introduce, thank you very much. I'd like to introduce our chairperson, Ms. Gemma Cruz Araneta, who we also hope to recruit into ICOMOS. I'm also the vice president of the International Cultural Tourism Committee, one of the scientific committees of ICOMOS, and secretary of the NCCA Committee on Monuments and Sites. I think Kay will introduce herself later. So I'm into cultural tourism, and of course, heritage advocacy. As Toti mentioned, we're the ones who scream a lot when a building is being demolished. No? Although people are already screaming at us because we're trying to find another approach. The thrust this year would be to create incentives for heritage conservation. So the conference at HCS this September in Bacolod City will be about incentives for heritage conservation, hoping that it becomes legislation and a national law. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm the other eye of ICOMOS, cultural tourism for ICOMOS. So we're kind of similar. Next we have Mr. Pong.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Pong. I'm a professional photographer, and I specialize in 360 immersive imaging. Currently, I'm doing an advocacy project of documenting all the heritage sites in 360. The website is called pamana.ph, and it's already online. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Rosh Kapati. My specialization is urban and regional planning, specific on national park management and world heritage. My current project is in Mindoro. It's a Tamara conservation area. So we're working to have a community-based conservation and development for indigenous people, the Mangyans, and the lowland communities. So I'm joining ICOMOS for the cultural aspect of the conservation of indigenous culture. At the same time, my other specialization is on environment conservation. So this makes.
Good afternoon. I'm Kay Manilong Isberto. I'm a lawyer, and I sit as the ICOMOS representative at the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. I have notes. What am I trying to do? Well, I'm trying to infuse the values of ICOMOS in government, and specifically at the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. what do I want? What does ICOMOS want? I figured, well, of course, ICOMOS stands for excellence. And I want the best practices in heritage conservation to be mainstreamed and institutionalized in Philippine cultural agencies, in government. The second one is that, as Toti pointed out, we're actually great at community-based heritage preservation. So we want the NCCA to promote participatory grassroots conservation. So again, how do we get that institutionalized? All of you will have to help me push NCCA and the other cultural agencies to do that. The third, increase heritage scholarships. How do we go about doing that? Please participate in the conferences that the NCCA will be organizing. And ICOMOS will also be partnering with NCCA and the other cultural agencies. So we need to increase scholarship, so let's publish these things in journals, and the knowledge should come from here. And the last one, blazing trails. Since I'm a lawyer, we always go back to the Constitution, and its preamble says that we're supposed to build a just and humane society. So how do we use art and cultural heritage to build a just and humane society? So that's the challenge I have for all of us today. Thank you very much.
Can I just add that Kay is the head of our legal committee, and she is trying to spearhead a movement to rationalize the heritage laws of the country. So maybe would you like to speak a little bit more about the heritage, about the legal committee aspect, please? It's quite important.
Well, right now, part of the things I do at the NCCA, there are two groups that are working there. Number one is the technical working group working on amending the heritage law. At the last NCMS meeting in 2013, we passed a resolution right now asking for the amendment to the heritage law because it's been there since 2010. It's now 2015. And it seems that the things we complained about before the heritage law remain the same. So maybe the law did not address our concerns. So it might be a good time to see how best to address that. The other one is a technical working committee that's supposed to be a committee with the other two cultural agencies in charge of heritage preservation. That's the National Museum. And they're here, and the National Historical Commission, they're not here. But the point is to make the NCCA actually has the two agencies as members. And the hottest issue now is the issuance of cease and desist orders. Since I already said this in public, and I already submitted memos, and I'm going to say it again. I have great discomfort on the power of the NCCA to issue cease and desist orders. And I say that at the risk of being accused of attacking the NCCA. I am not attacking the NCCA, I'm just stating my legal opinion, which legal opinion other lawyers agree with. It seems to work, it stops people from demolishing things. It hasn't been tested in court. We doubt if it will stand in court because the law says that only cultural agencies can issue the cease and desist order. There's a definition of cultural agencies, and my opinion and the opinion of other lawyers is that the NCCA is not a cultural agency because it's defined as the commission. So if it's a cultural agency that is supposed to issue it, and it's the commission that issues it, then the only conclusion with that is issuing something outside its power. Again, that's my opinion and the opinion of other lawyers. But until the Supreme Court says that that interpretation is correct, we can just, work with whatever's there, and then see where the bricks fall. We'll see. There are several cases already dealing with that. The NCCA has been sued at the Makati RTC for damages and prohibition. There's a pending case involving Torre de Manila before the Supreme Court. I don't know when the Supreme Court will decide on that. Under our law, the decisions of the Supreme Court form the law of the land. At the same time, the consultants engaged by the NCCA to amend the heritage law are looking at, and here you're free to make suggestions. How do we go about making sure that the demolition stop? We're also doing things to come up with a registry of cultural property. We've asked members of HCS actually to become members of, to be employed by the NCCA or to become consultants to come up with a pre-cup. I'm told that the best, the best practice is the ARCHES, which is an open source software for managing heritage, and that's funded by the Getty. And we're asking if we can partner with, I don't know, the private sector perhaps, to have that system used in the Philippines. That might be good. I don't know. So it's up to ICOMOS to make suggestions so that what we have can incorporate the existing best practices. And also see, but of course, only if it's applicable here. So that's where we are. We're presenting the amendments that we have worked on so far to the NCCA board by May 14. Other suggestions are welcome. I think the plan is to have a conference or a technical, like an FGD, inviting more people to look at the heritage law. The biggest challenge is that our heritage law is so ambitious and it includes movable cultural property in the registry, which doesn't make sense. If we can't even take care of our immovable, why do we want to include privately owned movables, right? So there. I need maybe your expertise and your energy to push for the amendments that we want. The people sitting there can't really claim to be experts on law and heritage. I can't even claim to be an expert on the law and heritage. And that's the reason why I'm asking all of you who have actual expertise on heritage to please send us your ideas so that we can incorporate them in the amendments. Make a list of the issues that you want addressed, because that's what the law is. Just because it's what it is now and that we worked so hard to come up with that version of the law, but then we've had 5 years, it's not working, and we're looking at it, so don't be silent. Say something. If there's anything you want added, please tell us what that is. And yeah, I guess maybe an earlier conversation said that this is actually a good time to restructure everything. How do we protect cultural heritage in the Philippines? It's about time that we really sit down and then deal with the truth, even if it hurts, and then start taking steps to make things better. There. Thank you.
Claire?
Hello everyone, so my name is Claire and right now I'm working on my graduate school thesis. It has something to do with coral stones. So I would also need your expertise with that, just in case.
Lisa?
Good afternoon, I'm Lisa Bright and I'm really humbled sitting here amongst architects, lawyers, professionals. I'm in the field of cultural diplomacy and development, meaning I do cultural networking, and I hope to be able to, with my network of international experts, the media and the business sector, I hope to be able to increase the visibility of ICOMOS here in the Philippines, in the ASEAN, and within Europe. Thank you so much for including me, for having invited me.
Thank you.
Bobby Pereira, Professor of Economics at Ateneo de Manila University. Nicknames Victor. Nicknames are part of our intangible heritage. And my main research area is actually urban economic analysis, economic development, and economics of Marx. Dr. Schatz will appreciate that. The current work that we're doing in terms of research is to get the book published with Dr. Schatz. They've been able to document the old buildings and structures of Manila, and he asked me to put in dreams of how to make these buildings restored and under possible adaptive reuses shall be. My main interest is urban analysis and how heritage is best preserved in the context of an overall urban plan. And just by way of information, historically, one of the most effective ways of preserving a country's heritage is not so much through heritage laws, but through legal property practices and zoning ordinances. We do have a zoning ordinance in Manila. I worked with that, but somehow they never bothered to take it very seriously. But maybe had they worked in zoning, we could also use that as a means to preserve heritage. Thank you very much.
I'm Joy Dara, the Ramon Otis Foundation. I'm an anthropologist by training. My specialization is in ethnoarchaeology. I'm doing at the present, being able to understand the past that I run. At the same time, I'm working in the advocacy unit of Rafi. I run the Culture and Heritage unit. I'd like to, part of the advocacy is really to go into the grassroots where you allow people to really buy into heritage. Because at some point, heritage has become very elitist, and so we like to bring that down. And so we ran a program called the Vicky Sakabili Night of Heritage, in which people go in different museums at night in a popular price of 150. So far we've done this in 4 cities. So on May 29, please mark it in your calendars to go and see museums from 6 o'clock until 12 midnight. And you'll see the culture is really alive, and because it becomes now an event for families, so you'll have generations coming to the different heritage sites and planning their nights, and trying to figure out how to go into the 4 different heritage sites. Please, I promise you, you'll not be able to do it in 6 hours. So thank you.
Ms. Joy Perez, our member, one of our members from Cebu. We have 4 members from Cebu, and she flew from Cebu just to attend this celebration.
I think it's good to mention that the Vicky Sakabili is in Cebu.
Yes. Dr. Shansilan.
Thank you. I want to thank Dr. Benita for mentioning the book we're working on, 3 volumes. Actually, it's in the press already, except that we're waiting for the artist to label it. I've also been working with UNESCO because we have this project on our rights analysis. We're picking up from Dr. Milata. We worked on a book together with anthropologists from UP and Ateneo to highlight what exactly are the issues in the preservation of the rights analysis. So the manuscript was already been submitted. And right now, I'm proposing to anthropologists and professors in cultural entrepreneurship and Ateneo to come out with the project, because the project really is to encourage people to develop enterprises so that people will stay in the region instead of migrating to Manila. So that is a project I'm proposing that they should do. Now, by the way, regarding what Joy said about heritage being elitist, I really wanted to propose that the Philippine Charter on Heritage should also have a version in the vernacular. Because, the term conservation will be very understandable to somebody who grows up speaking English. It is not that clear to many Filipinos. When we organized our first international conference on heritage in Bigan, people were afraid of the word conservation because some thought that then they couldn't gamble anymore. Because they were conservative. And I noticed in Ifugao, the Farmers Association in Magaan, which is one of the World Heritage Sites, calls themselves the Magaan Conservative Farmers Association. So, for heritage and conservation to be truly internalized by many people.
Hello, I'm Tara Garlao. I work primarily on community-based heritage tourism projects. Our current project in Fundación Santiago at the moment is in San Juan, Batangas, and it is now Cavite. And I guess as someone in the field, I can totally relate to what Dr. Shelson says. Because when you go into communities, for the first time, people just, for the first couple of sessions, they just stare and aren't sure how to proceed. So the language is very, very important. And since we work in the Tagalog region primarily, I was also able to notice that even the versions of Tagalog, the Tagalog spoken in Batangas is different from what's spoken in Kawit, and it's different from San Pablo, Laguna. So I think language is really a very, very powerful tool, and it can really open the minds of. So as an ad, maybe in the coming months, we will be launching a tour in San Juan, Batangas, and with so many experts here. Maybe you can come and critique the product that the community developed. It's primarily tours of heritage houses run by students or student college, so who aren't history majors or architecture majors. So if you can come and critique, we'll send an invitation through ICOMOS for your input.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Richard and I come from Andes City. I am the City Tourism Officer. In the morning, I work with LGU, and in the evening, I teach in the university. So my advocacy is heritage education, and because of this, I had the privilege to work with UNESCO in Seoul for youth development projects.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Maki Simpson, and I'm a cultural worker. And my area of specialization is architectural museology. And right now, I'm a volunteer to the Philippine participation to La Bienal de Venezia 2015.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Claudia Montero. I'm a practicing architect. So part of my experience was being one of the people who documented some of the heritage structures in the Philippines, particularly the National Cultural Treasures, which I was part last year. And currently, I'm a graduate student in UP Diliman, majoring Architectural Heritage Conservation. So Mappy, Claire, and some of the ICOMOS members were my classmates.
Okay, so we're open now for suggestions to Claire's project. How are we going to go about this? Claire, can I turn over to you and answer the questions? So any of you can ask questions.
Claire, Ivan. And the rest of the team, well, they're here, so they can also help you answer the questions.
I might not have seen it, but in the Declaration of Cultural Significance, I did not see the word community. So, isn't there a danger of outsiders, declaring something that the community does not even understand? Because there's no word that it will involve someone from the community who will help put the cultural significance of the place. So I could have not seen it na baka, but yeah, I didn't see the word community in the declaration of the cultural significance.
Thank you for that, Ivan. It's actually part of some of the points that we have in our existing draft. The community, the concept of community. Of course, we can't have them, or we can't do without them in terms of protecting our heritage. But I guess what you're trying to say also is that we need to be able to emphasize that bit in terms of, would that be decision making, just in case? Okay, I take it. Thank you. Community. Who else would have questions?
Actually, this is a reaction to your comment. I find it interesting. I think it's, what is the nature of the community? I think it's twofold. There's a community in the place itself, and the community in the larger scheme of things of, let's say, the country, in which case represented by the national agencies. Because sometimes, I mean, to react to something Toti said earlier, sometimes the community itself doesn't really know what they have. They're right in the middle of it, but they don't know really the value of it. And so in that case, the experts from outside are able to open their eyes.
And we also took into consideration that we have also indigenous communities who would also have very different perspectives when it comes to these things. So because this project is a 3-year project, we're hoping that we could actually dig deeper in terms of how we're able to define what community is in terms of this project. Alice first, or watch this.
This is drawing from the experience of working on natural heritage sites. I know culture is a very different realization or reality, you know, but in terms of natural heritage management, we can see through the review of legislations that what the collaborative management of protected areas come from the mistakes in the past. Before, natural sites were only used for recreation, and there's what we call fortress conservation, meaning, you know, you put the gate outside the arc of the park, outside the mountain to let the community out. It never really works. The community needs the resources. So anyway, fast forward to a few years in 1997, there was the bad experience of indigenous people being driven away from their own land. So, and then there's the LGU, the local government code, which pretty much tells you that this is your own municipality, you can do whatever you want. The other municipality, we share the same mountain, but we can have different laws. So you put the experience together, and now every protected area in the country has a PAMB, which is Protected Area Management Board. And this management board is a multi-stakeholder. So you have someone representing the IBs, you have someone representing the local government units, someone from the academe who is maybe a scientist, they study the resources, and you have the barangay captains for every territory inside the park. So just to maybe get that inspiration, how many cultural properties do we have? And do we actually need a management board for every property? It might be a bit tricky, but it's something that we could think about.
Thank you, Baj. We also took note of your suggestion. And earlier we were having a talk, and because his specialization is geography and landscapes, so he provided a very good insight as to how these things actually merge together: heritage and landscapes, community and landscapes, etc., etc. So more suggestions, please, because we really need them.
I think your charters should include something about taxes, tax rebates. It should be in a charter like that. we wanted to put something like that in Republic Act 10,066, it got erased somewhere along the way. Because if you don't speak to, let's say, COA or BIR, you should present a chart to them and ask for their suggestion of how you guys improve the tax rebate. Because I think that's the only way we can stop demolitions. If the property owner, heritage property owner, is given some kind of tax incentive, I'm sure they will make an effort to preserve their heritage. And if the developers, I mean, they're the culprits here actually, they should be in this room, they never attend their meetings. And the developers are also given some kind of tax incentive. I think they will be more careful about demolishing existing structures. Because, you know, to them it's all money. At first I thought that I should suggest to you that maybe we can ask the Filipino or Chinese Chamber of Commerce to invite all the developers and then we can tell them about heritage. Or maybe we should ask the Philippine Stock Exchange to arrange a meeting there in their lounge so that all these developers can come and we can bounce on them. And or maybe the Supreme Court, you know, get them all together and we can tell them about these things. I think it's money they're interested in. So please include in your charter, your Philippine charter, something about that.
I think that's a very good point because my father is the National Artist for Architecture. And I really had a very difficult time because my brothers, except for one, wanted to sell the property. And I didn't have money to buy them out. And, but you know, I was hard-headed and I said, I'm not going to sell this property. And they said, yeah, but look about the taxes. What will happen about the taxes? Well, I'm doing something on my own, even if I can't afford really. I talked to the vice mayor of Pasay, and we wrote a letter that if they could make a house, a heritage house of Pasay City, and for me not to pay taxes. They're having a meeting now with the councilors, and I hope they pass that I don't have to pay taxes and preserve the house of my father. And I'd really like one of these days to invite all of you to see my father's house, which is for adopted reuse. So I think what Gemma says is very important about the taxes because that's what my brother said. But we have to sell because we have to pay the taxes. But you know, I said no. Even if I don't have money, I'm not going to sell that house. So let's hope that I get what I want.
As usual, Dr. Charles is not holding to say this. Because we're not exactly sure whether the taxation should be included in the heritage charter, so it has to be included somewhere. It's part of our own consciousness. But in addition to the BIR and the COA, as mentioned by Gemma, we have a peculiar situation that we now have the local government code, which means we have to be working with the local government units who are the ones responsible for the ordinances of real property taxes. I do not know if that means having to go on a city-by-city basis or if this is a national agency to remove them. Most built heritage are located in highly urbanized areas anyway, so that can be our priority. And in addition, I'd also like to add that when they were doing the land use of Manila when I was as a consultant at that time, among the things that I don't think it ended up there, but you see, heritage properties tend to have a much lower property tax rate in in Europe and in North America, much lower. And demolition as a very, very punitive rate. The penalty is very, very huge. Okay? Of course, that means that your tax workers and your government workers are well paid. So it's part of our advocacy also is to make sure that they collect taxes and they pay their workers to implement the law. So I do not know where to place that, but we have to focus a lot on the real property taxes being collected by towns and cities to make sure that urban heritage sites get the lowest possible tax rates. And any deviation, there always be a huge, really, really huge penalty, almost to the level of the actual demolition of the ongoing and even the new structure.
A friend of mine has a house in Pampanga, and they are not asked to pay the taxes. This is the Quezon house, and that's why I wrote to the vice mayor. So they're not paying taxes because it's a house, it's a heritage house, Pampanga. That's where I got the idea.
For the lifespan of the project, definitely there will be a lot of consultations. Initially, the people that we identified to be, the people that we identified who we are going to consult with are initially experts in the field of conservation. But then again, we realized, and to your point, we realized that there is so much more in cases of culture and heritage. So yes, it's really part of the program to actually involve talks and consultations with local government units and even some departments or some government agencies.
Let me just take this occasion to try to explain what's the source of taxes. Generally, there are two kinds of taxes. Internal revenue taxes imposed by the national government and local taxes imposed by the local government units. Where are the internal revenue taxes? The law there is the National Internal Revenue Code. And we have several laws, including the Foreign Investment Acts and the Tourism Code, listing incentives for all kinds of things. New business, tourism, things like that. Local government taxes, the Local Government Code gives the power to the municipalities and the cities. So yes, if you want to get incentives from the local governments, you have to do it city by city, municipality by municipality. Ivan said that the topic of the HCS will be incentives. And this is where I hope that we can come up with one voice in asking our government to give us the incentives that we want. Why? Because I think even amongst us, we're really not sure what is it supposed to be. I met an American lawyer and he told me that in the US, if your property is listed, you can get the government to give you a rebate for what you spent on conservation. So it's either they give you your money back or you can use that as a tax credit for the next 5 years. Will our government agree? I don't know. Right now, the Department of Finance is looking at all the laws involving tax incentives. This is really a good time for everyone who has any tax issue to sit down and figure out what do we want. What's our basis for saying so? If we can get international studies that we can cite to say that this is the only way to preserve heritage, this is the only way we can get people who own heritage to preserve it, then let's give that to our legislators. Another thing, all revenue measures must emanate from Congress. So again, this is a good time to make your congressman work for you. Find out who they are. Push them. Tell them that I will vote for you if you do this. But again, let's be clear. What do we want? And what's our evidence to say that what we want makes sense? What we want has basis, empirical evidence, international evidence, something. Because as you can see, the current head of the BIR is really bent on collecting the last centavo from everyone. And as far as I know, the Department of Finance even wants to cancel existing tax incentives because they feel that the government is already giving so much and still no one's paying. So we have to make the government feel that, okay, the Constitution says preserve heritage. This is the only way you can get the people who own heritage to preserve it. So, yes, there.
It's good for tourism.
Yes.
It's good for tourism. So the Department of Tourism should be our ally.
We're talking tax incentives, we're talking real estate tax, we're talking income tax, but there are other incentives that we have not yet considered, like building code exemptions. In Singapore, if you restore or you reuse a gazetted building or house, you're exempt from providing the required parking slots. You are exempt from many other requirements of the building code. In other countries, you are also given other incentives such as assistance in planning, etc., etc. So the tax incentive system or the incentive system that we're looking at should really be holistic and cover all points.
My comment is related to tax. Is that okay? Okay. I just wanted to ask the first part. The board evidence of social significance, right? And CSD on our proposed building charter. And I think that relates to what I raised earlier about community. So if perhaps you could explore social significance and interpretation of heritage, because community might not even know why a particular item or place is of cultural value, and without any interpretation, they might just not knowing for the next 20 years. So if you could include perhaps something about heritage interpretation in a charter, that might be useful.
Thank you. And when you said social significance, does that also include institutions and how institutions affect society? And vice versa?
The board charter was actually used as a general for individual states to come up with their own definition of what cultural social significance is. So it's not necessarily an institution for particular groups of people. That's how they use it for the various states and when they assess.
My suggestion also is you also translate the terms into parameters, because it's so, when you speak of intangible heritage or intangible by the meaning itself, it's so difficult to measure, as you did mention a while ago. You find it difficult to connect the tangible heritage with another bit. It's because the measures are not well defined. In education, that's very important.
In fact, there were talks before whether we opt out of tangible and intangible and instead use material and immaterial. So there are several terms that we were trying to explore as to how they could be applied in our own charter, because it has to be very specific to our
When you say it is socially significant,
right,
what are the parameters?
Hi, I'm Clara. I'm from Heritage Conservation Societies, and I'm also one of the core delegates participating to the ASEAN Youth Volunteer Program, where we spend like 3 weeks going around the map. So anyway, a few suggestions lang po. First, I first brought it up with the architects in our youth group. In Malacca, they actually have, they mentioned po yung sa charter na kailangan may experts in like specific fields like architecture, etc. But I was reminded of one example when sitting on the church. Licensed architect naman po yung gumawa nun. Naman nag-get yung volunteer natin sa sinod. Sa sinamento, hindi niya dapat sinamento yung kasal. So, I think, compared that to Melaka, where we were with the World Heritage Office, they actually need like a certain certification, like an additional certification before they can actually practice inside the zone itself. That's number one. Number two, na-mention din po kanina, like how they translate the charter into the local languages. I think for someone like me who, I mean, admittedly, I do not like, one reason I did not go to law school is because I hate reading laws after law. So that's one option that we're exploring for HCSY is to create something like a step-by-step for the community to make it more understandable, because I graduated with a degree, and yet sometimes I even find the law, reading the law teachers very scary, especially that I'm not a lawyer. So something that's a step-by-step, something more understandable for the community. And also, even yung pag-ano and how do I phrase this? I'm also of the camp that we should make heritage more friendly and fun. Because speaking as someone who's lived 24 years old, I'm the youngest in this room. Yun lang po. Sana we get maging mas open yung heritage community to people. Because earlier I was leading a tour. I'm part of the Noisy Kids of Escolta. We were leading a tour of architects, and some were architects, some were architecture students. We were touring them around this area. And then, meron kaming, naglalakad lang siya, may choice bridge, picture siya. So she asked if we can join. Turns out she's studying taking her MA in architecture. So sabi niya, buti na lang, meron nakakita ko kayo, because honestly, for even if I didn't even have a chance to know about HCSY, I'm interested in old buildings, but where do I go? I think that's one question for a lot of people who are interested in heritage. They don't know where to go. Even, for example, we had a discussion back in World Next. Our architecture students approaching us, that we always wanted to join this movement, but we don't know how. And sometimes it leads people to, for example, on Facebook, on all the Manila scholars, there's also a lot of misinformation. So I think that's something that should be added to the charter as well. Like how can we have to make education a priority. And on a related note, even if we have, for example, like tax rebates, that's one thing. Another thing is that, for example, how do you convince people to pay for heritage? One comment, because we have the tour, we asked people to pay 500 pesos for that tour around this Escolta. May nag-comment na sabi, sino naman ng Escolta, bakit 500? So I had to explain na, okay, you know what man, heritage buildings cost so much to maintain, kailangan din namin kami mga volunteers ng merienda. And of course, entrance fees in the museum was the food. So I guess, ang daming aspect na kailangan ayusin, and it's actually exciting because I like the process. So, yun lang po. Thank you.
Quick question, Claire. So once we have the charter ready, is it going to be a required, meeting, or so who do we give it to? The government agencies? Are they going to be signatories for that? No. How does it work once we have it ready? How do we make it,
The answer to that, in this charter, is should go into Republic Act 10066 because it says NCCA is supposed to prepare guidelines, etc., which NCCA has not done. So we're doing this for NCCA. In the same way that somebody had better come up with an inventory of heritage nationwide heritage structures, which also is
the heritage law.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Triangle. I'm with administration of First United Building, the 1928 built Terrace Manila building. And on the matter of taxes and heritage properties, which I think are defined under by Republic Act 10066 as interesting cultural property. That's how I read that, you know, like old buildings that were built by named architects are called important cultural properties. Okay. Now, when it comes to important cultural properties, there's really no problem with income tax, because when you make income, it's affordable to pay the taxes. What makes it unaffordable is that if you have an ICT building sitting on a land and the real estate has no connection to history, because it's inanimate by yung land, no? Unless the law would declare something revolutionary. If, for example, if Jose Rizal was shot in this piece of land, nothing can be built on it, or maybe only a monument can be built and nothing else. But if we did that, then as our society matures, we will have more heroes, and we will have more and more land that cannot be touched, because somehow along the line, I mean, if a society turned out to be 10,000 years old, there'll be the equivalent of 10,000 pieces of real estate that you cannot touch, no? In which case, we might get to a point wherein we have more land that cannot be touched by people who need to touch the land at some future time. So going back to my point, it's the tax on the improvement or on the building. I think that's really what's causing all the hurt. And when you have small property owners holding small pieces of property, and then large developers come in and under the present abnormal circumstance they demolish, it drives land prices up. So the owners of land find it harder to resist the temptation, especially if, as the truth, the real situation is that every 50 to 100 years, people pass on from one generation to another. Was mentioned by the lady a while ago. When there's a generational passing of the land, the control is splintered. And so no single property owner can now dictate the pace and the improvement of that land, because there is a building that's sitting on it that they cannot dispose of. One such example here is the Gonzalo Buyal building, right along Escolta. I think there are sidewalls. It has a big sidewall sign. By the last narration of our barangay Pagawad, there are over close to 200 yata ang count niya. Close to 200 heirs will need to be consulted to get something going. So for the past 30 years, he's been trying to get something going to no avail. So when large developers come in and they demolish old property, naturally they have in mind that they will build something much, much higher so they can recoup their investments. That high bid price registers at the City Hall as tax revenue, and it somehow triggers an adjustment in assessments. No? So if you are an owner of an old property and your generation ownership has passed, whoever is administering is now under pressure by his peers and his relatives, no? That our property is now valued so much higher. But our rental, naturally, because the property is old, naturally the rental is no longer commensurate to the property. So it's natural for everybody to nag the loving property administrator, ibenta na natin to. Kasi it doesn't make sense. The usual argument is, let's get the money, put the money in the bank, at a very safe interest rate, and we will get more interest income than if we were to rent it out for adaptive use. So if it can be done that municipal governments should limit the tax, the property tax that they levy on properties, then that would solve a main problem. That would allow those old properties to, and then of course comes the incentive as to how do you encourage the usually innocent property owner on adaptive reuse. That is something that ECOMOS can perhaps come forward and present a program for that.
Thank you, Robert. Now we'll have one last question.
I'm from Making Media Philippines. Anyway, because apparently all of us are having for tax incentives, and as a disclaimer, I don't work for the government. Local government units are all driven by income because of the media resources that most of them have. For example, as one lady here was speaking, that Pasay is considering granting her a tax incentive for her property because it's a heritage structure. I guess apart from asking for incentives, in turn, the local government units who can potentially look at the valuation of a land. If a building is high-rise building is built there, and let's say several offices are staying there, they earn a lot of income from that. But I guess on the part of local government, if you would consider any law, we should also compensate the local government for an additional internal revenue allotment for them. Because if they don't get the money they have gathered from that property, then by all means they will not support any conservation efforts if they're not compensated for the money they could potentially earn from that.
Thank you for bringing that up, because it's a two-way street. We keep saying they should make heritage this, but what are we giving them? I have clients who are developers who want heritage and tax studies done for the properties, for the redevelopment of the properties also, and any little move you do on that property, if the cost is in the hundreds of millions. So it's costing them hundreds of millions. What are we giving them in exchange? They are ready to follow. The developer we're working with says we are ready to follow whatever is supposed to be done for this property. If it is really culturally important property, we will do it. But you know, it's all money out on us. We get no tax incentive, we get no incentives of any other kind. So if we're talking incentives, I'd just like to bring up the idea that it's a two-way street. We should have some developers there that are talking incentive and building owners.
Thank you. Do you want to ask something? Okay.
The one also mentioned here by Coach whispered to me is that with real property taxes, they go hand in hand with zoning. Because right now, the way taxes are done, it's what you say is the use of your property. So you say it's residential, even though you have a restaurant here at the back, then you pay residential tax rates. As opposed to if the government says, this is zoned as mixed use, and this is your tax rate. As long as you follow the zone. You don't follow that, you get a building rate. Which therefore means you can also zone heritage districts so that they can have lower tax rates. they can even justify, because there's a constitutional provision about no taxes on properties used for educational and religious purposes. Okay, if one of the reasons why we keep heritage is for educational purposes. Also, it's supposed to teach the future generation of our architectural skill. One can actually justify sale tax, property tax, and heritage structures because they also develop the education level. So it's a combination of the tax rates and the zoning and taking advantage of these zoning and of these constitutional provisions. That is what Rochelle said.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I'll ask the question. I was sidelined, but it has nothing to do with taxes because my work is in the Manggagawa stage. Okay, I work, I'm the one who lines the scaffolding, and I work with the architects and the other conservators, and my concern is this: is there going to be, where's Claire? Is there going to be item there on implementation, because a lot of times when we line the scaffolding and we do the conditional assessment of whatever, the wall, the building, structure, you always see there, a lot of times we have properties or heritage sites that have been already previously restored. Now, just like medicine, which evolves, conservation is a live thing. It also evolves. The more we learn, the more they change. So, I think we need to have some kind of Philippine standard on how to intervene or how to re-restore. There's no word yet. I mean, restore the previous restoration. Or what materials, like, okay, in the area, say, of lime, which is always a debate. How much percentage cement? How much this? In other countries, and I hate to say in other countries, but yes, in other countries, they already have a standard for building or restoration material. And still we find ourselves debating on it, okay? Which is like a lot of lost time. Instead of just climbing on the scaffolding and doing a repointing, you still have to debate with a national agency as to how much percentage of cement do you put, okay? And the answer is none. So, and they won't buy that, right? So it's the perpetual struggle over the 1% of stupid cement, right? And that's really so frustrating on the Manggagawa, who just wants to just get up there and do it, right? So I think we really need to find a standard for materials, restoration materials, that can, for all we know, like in this area they use egg as an adhesive. In another area, it's horsehair. In another area, it's sand. In another area, it's whatever. Coral stone or smashed tiles. Did it ever occur to anybody that maybe in each site they had something endemic that they used? So I really think there needs to be, this is not in the heritage law anymore, but somebody needs to find a standard for materials, for restoration, for virgin restoration or re-restoration. And I think that comes in the second part, right? In the implementation, but I'm going ahead of you. So that was my only question.
Well, as of the moment, if you're going to see the entire draft that we made, we only talk about conservation, the actual conservation processes in very general terms. So nothing that specific yet. Yes. So it could be part 2, section 2 of the charter. We will see, but we will try to explore that option as well. And yes, NCC 8, please. just leaving. So yeah,
Okay, I think this has been a wonderful forum, and I think there is a kind of solution here in terms of how the Philippine Charter can move forward, the fora that you're asking for, the discussions you're asking for, not just in terms of tax incentives, but also in terms of implementation. Just the other day, actually, I was having a discussion with Maris Jokno of NHCP, and I was telling her on would she be open? Would she be open to the idea of a kind of low-key round table among the HCS and ICOMOS, National Museum, and the NHCP, because at least in the aspect of implementation, in the aspect of the science, the technology of implementation, these different tracks have different knowledge. And I think the knowledge has to come together. That knowledge has to come together. NHCP apparently has a lot of funding for equipment, equipment having to do with materials. And so I think one role that ICOMOS plays, that ICOMOS can play, which is very important, is the creation of dialogue. First of all, the creation of protocol for the dialogue, that there be a kind of, maybe a calm dispassion, such that the knowledge does get exchanged. So I see two things. Just my reaction to this afternoon. A kind of opportunity, a forum for maybe for the HCS assembly. Before that, ICOMOS and HCS and other concerned citizens, I imagine from Escolta and other heritage areas, come together, and as Ivan and I were suggesting, we have a PowerPoint, project the draft of the charter, project the document, and we type, we work it out together. That's one, right? And the second is, not long from now, we should have that quiet and dispassionate gathering of the cultural agencies and ICOMOS and HCS to talk about the implementation aspect of things. So on that note, I think that I see the role of ICOMOS as really dialogue. That we're able to build these bridges and it'll take us somewhere. So with that, I thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Oh, one more, can I just add? There is a wonderful little museum here in this building. It's a Calvo museum, and it's on the mezzanine. You go down first to the ground floor, and then you take the steps up to the mezzanine. And please don't be dispassionate. Be passionate about the donation you put in the little box.
It's up to you. It's just that it's really so frustrating when I heard people talking about taxes, and final word came from Toti when he said, "What can we give?" And then it's so hard, very hard, because we here, what makes us different from houses is these are buildings that are still earning but are getting old. It's just like an old car. When you get old, the maintenance gets so high. And sometimes I can't even convince totally my own family if they decide to sell. They said, "What? We're going to hang ourselves. We can't sell." See? If there are no incentives, incentives is very clear for the city government. Anyway, there's a little exhibit hall on your way out. Feel free to enjoy a little history of Escolta in the movie industry, because we placed that for when President Mayor Era was the guest speaker on the 75th, just to make him aware of the importance of Escolta. But to this day, we haven't been getting any incentives at all. In fact, what happened was very sad. 2 years ago, he raised the taxes in Manila by 150%. Siyempre, commercial kami. In fact, it's ridiculous that even the building, despite the age, it's now higher in valuation than even the land because it earns route. So that's the sad plight of our state here in Escolta. And I don't know how much prayers we're going to need.
Perhaps it's time for us to come out with a statement. I don't know whether we're naive now. Could we come out with a statement in support of Escolta and meet with the government, with the mayor? Perhaps it's time to lobby for it.
Actually, Escolta's been lobbying the mayor.
Yeah, but I mean we together with them. I don't know what it is.
HCS Ecomos? A larger group, yes. Perhaps we should do that, and to take cues from what Kay was saying. And I think really it's the voice of the people. You know, allow the voice of the people. Yeah, that's a good suggestion.